You want to talk to somebody who is a real conservative and yet sounds like a Democrat. What happened? Hey, I'm Chris Cuomo. Welcome to another episode of the Chris Cuomo Project. And the goal here is for you to be a critical thinker, right? Because you are. And for you to have an independent mindset, not to get caught into the party silos. And one of the really interesting ways to do that is to listen to people where this is what they do, is think about politics and write about it and cover it. And yet they now sound totally different than their label. Remember, the extension of the party game is the label game. Charlie Sykes, look him up, Sykes. His website is called The Bulwark, but he's been with Scripps. He's on MSNBC all the time. He's a conservative, okay? He's a real traditional conservative. He is not a Trump guy. Why? Because he believes Trump is an embarrassment to his party and an embarrassment to his values. But he is also a metaphor for what's going on in America, the state of grievance. Now, here's who I'm really hoping will watch this. Look, everybody's welcome, but center left. Why? There's too much easy dismissing of anybody who supports Trump as being an idiot or irrational. You're missing something. And here's what you're missing. That there is a group of people, I don't think it's a majority in the country. In fact, I would say I know it's not a majority in the country, who believes that the people and the processes and institutions that are highlighting Trump's wrongdoings are all the problem. Deep state. Not some mythology about some culture that doesn't exist. I'm telling you, I've worked with the FBI and against the FBI for over 20 years. If anything, they're much more right in terms of their political ideology. I don't think they practice it on the job. I'll be honest. I think these men and women do the job well, by and large. But I've never, ever thought to myself in 20 years, boy, they're a bunch of lefties. Anyway, put it to the side. Charlie Sykes is going to talk about what's happening in the American electorate, why grievance has such gravitas. Grievance has become gravitas, which means that instead of having to understand how to get better and how to get things done, it's just knowing what buttons to push about what is pissing people off. And that's Donald Trump. He is an agent of grievance. And it is working and it continues to work. And we have to discuss why. Charlie Sykes. Charlie, if the right is so uniquely toxified by Trump's influence in the demagoguery, how do you explain the two parties being in such a dead heat for power in this country? Congress is divided, seems to be an open question as to who wins for president. How is that true if the right is uniquely toxified?
Well, it's because America is uniquely divided into these alternative reality silos. I mean, you and I both live in these silos. You know, half of the country has a completely different sense of reality, of the issues that matter, and the personality. So, I mean, that's certainly part of it here. You know, and the reality is that look, people are in a bad mood. You know, they are disillusioned. We've had this march through the institutions. People have lost faith. And so everything is up for grabs.
How do you rationalize, and first of all, have you ever seen before a party overwhelmingly support someone who has this much legal heat on them?
No, you know, and I think about this all the time. You know, what is the parallel? You know, I grew up during the Watergate era where, you know, I mean, everybody thought that all of our institutions were under siege, but ultimately, we had guardrails. I mean, A followed B. If you were exposed as a crook and a liar, your political party would not support you. The institutions would stand up against you. This is the unique moment in American history. And it's a unique moment, particularly, you know, as somebody that comes from the conservative movement, to watch the absolute inversion of all of the values. You know, you remember back in the 1990s when conservatives and Republicans used to talk about how character matters?
Character counts.
Yeah, you know, the book of virtues. Now we have a Republican Party that basically has decided, and then I'm talking about the rank and file, has basically decided that it doesn't matter. You know, the former president could be credibly accused of rape, fraud, conspiracy, conspiracy to defraud the federal government, absconding with war plans, violating the Espionage Act, and it just doesn't matter. And that is a really extraordinary moment, not just in American politics, but in American culture, that you would have this mass movement basically look at Donald Trump and go, yeah, we're okay with that. And see, that doesn't even strike me as ideological anymore.
The why matters, right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what to do with the why, but I think about and understand the why, and I'm fortunate enough to live in a very Trumpy place and have friends who are pretty conservative. So I hear a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And the why is that who and what are condemning Trump are seen as a bigger problem than Trump. Trump is a big mouth. He is a rule breaker, but he's not unique in those regards. What is unique is that the systems that are supposed to be better than that, and the people who say they're better than Trump are not. So we reject them, we reject their findings, and we reject the function of the system, which we believe is equally as bad as Trump, and we're not going to let them be the check on Trump. What do we do with that?
Okay, no, first of all, I think that's a good analysis of all of this. The power of whataboutism just simply cannot be denied. And it doesn't take much in order to create this sense that, okay, Donald Trump, is awful, but the people who are aligned against him, I mean, they are also a menace. They hate America, they hate you, they hate God. They're going to destroy all that is good and beautiful in America. And you know how the human mind works. It looks for things that affirm its prior prejudices. If you want to believe something, you only need one data point, and that's easy to get on the internet these days. If you want to disbelieve something, so there is this sense that no matter how bad Trump is, everybody else is worse, and that everybody else is worse. And there's always going to be some data point that's going to support that. And I don't know how you break through all of that, because there's such a huge investment in the infrastructure in convincing people that they need to be fearful, they need to be outraged, they need to not believe the usual sources. And part of what's happened since, look, it's been going on for a long time, you've been around a long time, but really accelerated since 2015, 2016, this march through all of the institutions, discrediting one after another. The discrediting of the media as being any credibility. And by the way, I was a longtime critic of bias in the media. I mean, there are legitimate criticisms that can be leveled against the media. But what happened was we destroyed, and by we I mean the right, destroyed all of the legitimacy of fact-based information. It's impossible to push back. And now you're seeing this long march through other institutions, whether it's education, whether it is the medical community, the scientific community, and now, of course, the criminal justice community. And at the end of the day, Chris, what really worries me is, we'll look around and Donald Trump will be gone, but all of these institutions will be in tatters, at least in the minds of something close to 50% of Americans. And I'm not sure how you come back from that.
How did it get to 50%? Because usually this is an argument for 25%, or the old aphorism in politics is a third, a third, a third. A third hate you, hate everything you say. A third love you, love everything you say. But most of those 2/3 are about identity. And then the final third is open-minded people. The disconnect that I can't put my finger on, Charlie, because I think we get an unfair representation by social media, which certainly I have been guilty of, and the media at large is often guilty of using as a proxy for Vox Populi or insight. But all of the non-cognoscenti in my life, people who are doing very well, big fishing boats, Charlie, big fishing boats, floating condos, they do not focus on any of these things. They have one-line opinions. Trump, oh yeah, he's fucking crazy. But you know what? He's living in the head of the left rent-free. And they're all dirty. He's just a wild man. And that's it. And they don't think about it anymore. Hey, I hope that they're not going to make my kid think it's okay to be transgender tomorrow. I hope they're not putting that in my kid's head. I mean, if that's what he or she is, or they, or whatever they wind up becoming, okay, but I don't want people teaching them about that. And then that's it. It's over. And I think the DOJ, probably could have done a little more, but whatever. How do we connect with those people, Charlie, who aren't obsessed?
Well, okay. I mean, if I had the answer to that, I wouldn't be sitting here talking with you, right? I'd be sitting in the White House or someplace giving advice to somebody, and nobody's going to listen to it. But I mean, part of it is I keep, let's run the clock back. Let's run the clock back before this all happened. Would it have made a difference if trusted voices would have spoken out earlier? If other conservatives would have said, listen, you do not want to go in this direction. This is not who we are. This is not what we stand for. If more people would have, appealed to the better angels of people's nature, or if at the time when, these guys are sitting around, and I know exactly who you're talking about, if somebody in the room like that, this guy he's a complete fraud. He's a complete bullshitter. You would not hire him for your business. You would not hire him as your accountant. You would not hire him as your lawyer. You wouldn't put him on any of your boards, and you definitely wouldn't want him teaching your children. And if somebody within that world would have said that, instead, what everybody did was either figure, this won't last. I'm going to keep my head down. I'm not going to push back. The Paul Ryans of the world decided they were going to make a Faustian bargain with Trump. It was very, very transactional. And as a result, these things were not challenged. And it didn't matter whether or not the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC was on a regular basis saying, hey, by the way, you know how crazy this guy is? Do you know what a fraud this guy is? Because they weren't in that bubble. They weren't in that universe. They didn't hear that. They were listening to trusted voices, and the trusted voices failed. And among those trusted voices would be the churches. And, to your point about getting out of the cognoscenti, the thing that blows my mind is when you go out in the world, I'm not talking about Twitter, I'm talking about just average Americans who go to church, go to their kids' soccer games, in 98% of the rest of their lives, they value things like honesty and integrity and prudence, right? And yet there's a disconnect when it comes to politics. And I think that's fascinating because nobody, and I know a lot of people who have exactly the attitude you described, but you know what? They wouldn't want their kids to be like that. They wouldn't want to raise their kids to behave like Donald Trump. These are the same people that will stress the importance of sportsmanship, of being a good loser, of being honest, treating women, with respect.
But that's because they see the politics of it, Charlie, as a sport. And I think that it is a natural function of the two-party system. That the only place the two-party system can take you by its nature of being binary is to the bottom. Any competition that is about me and you that doesn't have rules, that, someone else is forming so you can't poke me in the eye, anything that is that way ultimately goes to attrition. I win because I make Charlie lose. Yeah. And that's what we're seeing. That's why we campaign 24/7, 365, because it's easier than governing. And you could just tear down the other side and create all your wars, and you'll keep the electorate. Sure, they're tired, but they got to vote at some point, and maybe the pie will get a little smaller, but it's better than governing and being held to account for what I do. It's easier for me to win by saying Sykes is worse than saying, look what I did, I'm better.
Well, and also there has been this shift from being focused on governing and being focused on policy to being focused on the show. I mean, this is the thing that Donald Trump gets and Ron DeSantis doesn't. Ron DeSantis thinks that it's about policy and it's about if I can be as Trumpy on one thing or another, if I can talk about woke. Donald Trump understands people aren't interested in the governing part of it. They're interested in the show, in the performance. And there was a moment where, it's interesting you put it this way, because there are a lot of people who, spent years thinking that people liked him in spite of his transgressions. And I've become more and more convinced that part of Trump's appeal is that they like him because of it. There's a certain titillation they get because he basically is in this moral free fire zone. And if he can get away with it, then there's kind of a tingle up your leg, kind of get a dopamine hit that, we are poking these people in the eye.
It's like Bonnie and Clyde.
It has become more theater. Yeah.
It's like, what was the one with Woody Harrelson and Natural Born Killers?
Yeah.
And the perversity of it is, that used to be the fiction part, right? The suspension of disbelief is that someone could murder people and you would find that entertaining or compelling or in any way admirable. And that's what this is a baby version of, that the system that Trump is violating is the problem. So it's like someone pissing off the warden. Good. because the warden's unfair to all of us and he has too much power. The answer to your question is, if it had happened earlier, yeah, it would have worked if it were anyone but Hillary Clinton. Because Hillary Clinton checked every box of what people who are for Trump don't like. And you would have needed someone who could have said, I haven't been here the whole time. I'm new, okay? And yeah, I've been in office as a governor or, probably governor because they do best, but, senator, whatever. And this guy is bullshit. This guy is of no account. He has never succeeded. He could never do what I do. And who was aggressive in that fight. But you didn't have that.
No, you didn't have that. And in 2016, it was pretty obvious the voters, they didn't want another Clinton-Bush fight. They wanted change. They wanted something new. They were tired of it. And what did the Democrats do? They gave them another Clinton. And in retrospect, it should be pretty obvious that maybe she was the only one in America that could have lost to Donald Trump. But this is something to keep in mind.
Here's something you may not know. Indeed, that's the hiring platform to use. Attract, interview, hire, all one place. Who says? I'll tell you who does. Talent Nest, #1 source of hires in the United States. Oh, how many? Good question. 3 million businesses use Indeed worldwide. Come on, you want to start hiring right now? How about a $75 credit? You get to upgrade your job posting. You do it at Indeed.com/Chris C. The offer is good for a limited time. $75 credit, Indeed.com/Chris C. When you go to where? I forgot. Indeed.com/Chris C. Indeed.com/Chris C. Terms and conditions apply? Always. But if you need to hire, you need Indeed. You like to spice up the game by picking some stats and who's going to do well and you're responsible with it and you have a good time? That's great. Do you do it by finding some shady guy who knows a guy who knows a guy, or by going to some website where you don't know what they're going to do with your personal financial information? That's bad. That's why I'm pitching you Prize Picks, okay? It's the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. If you're going to be making your picks, make them in a place that a lot of people use that works well. And here's the beautiful thing. They say they're the easiest, most exciting way to play DFS. I say I don't know a damn thing about DFS, but I'll tell you this. I can use Prize Picks. I went on the site. I could pick a player from 2 different sports and 2 different positions, whatever it is. And all I'm doing is me against the numbers on whatever the projected performance is in a specific category, and I make my picks. You get quick withdrawals. You got easy gameplay, an enormous selection of players and stat types. That's what makes it the #1 daily fantasy sports app, okay? So if you go to prizepicks.com/CCP and you use the code CCP for a first deposit, they're going to match it up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/CCP, use the code CCP, first deposit match up to $100.
I also think that there is this, we're talking about the bubble and how uniquely toxic the right is. I am struck by the fact that the left also lives in its bubble and does not understand how some of the things it does feeds into this phenomenon that you're talking about. That in fact, it's very easy to say, well, if you vote for Donald Trump, it's because you are pro-fascist or you are a racist. Well, and some of them are. There are racists and fascists out there, but there are also a lot of people who are worried about, things like the economy or the border or crime. And at some point, you have to show that you're listening to them. And I think that one of the problems of particularly the Democratic Party, and we're going to get some blowback on this, I know, is that a party that used to be fundamentally based on the working class has become dominated at certain levels by these academic social warrior elites. And that they make some, valid points on a number of issues, but they are also have found themselves alienated from their old constituencies. And so one of the things that I think that the Democrats need to do is to ask themselves, why did so many people who used to vote for Democrats, who may have voted for Barack Obama twice, why did they vote for this guy? Why don't they see what we see? And I think it's in part because they're not looking around and saying, okay, maybe we need to take some of these issues seriously. Simply because Fox News thinks it's a problem doesn't mean we should deny that it's a problem. The border is a problem. Crime is a problem. The variety of these things are problems.
Look at the East Palestine. We lived this with Flint when Rachel Maddow at one of your home bases, MSNBC, she decided to shine a light on it. Now, look, some people will say, no, it wasn't Maddow. Yes, it was. I was on TV at the time, and she did a deep dive on it. It reminded everybody. And yes, it had the additional hook that it was disproportionately minority.
Right.
East Palestine, no one dies. Okay, well, no one was dying at Flint early on either, but it didn't have the minority hook for the left, and nobody died. And in the media, we don't cover a lot of things where no one dies. And it is a ruby red place, and it got overlooked. The problem is, it's a great opportunity for Biden to show that he's better, to go to a place where they're not his people, do what he does best, which is to be an empath, and to show that government can work for people who think that government sucks. But they won't do it. And now it's become a political football where they believe the right is using it as a weapon against them. And I think the biggest mistake for the Democrats that I can see as someone who grew up in a Democratic household is that my father and that generation of your guys, of those guys, were great messengers.
Yeah.
And you guys are getting, not you guys, the left is getting out-messaged all the time, Charlie. They're getting out-messaged. And they'll say, like I just had Senator Joe Manchin say to me, hey, Cuomo, you better stop bashing Congress. The 117th Congress was one of the most productive I can remember. I said, really? Based on what? He said the chips, the infrastructure thing, and this. I said, all right, so it's like two things. He's like, yeah, but they were really big deals, and we did it with both houses. We figured it out.
Yeah.
We haven't been doing that lately. But I had never heard that before. I had never heard it argued that before, or ironically enough, argued by a guy that the Democrats now hate, in the former Senator Joe Manchin, even though he's never changed from what he's always been. And how do they fix that? Because Biden is a lot of things. A great messenger is not one of them.
No, and this is something they're going to have to wrestle with. Even if you're willing to concede that, okay, he's been a successful first-term president and he deserves re-election, what kind of a candidate is he going to be? For example, I'm sorry, this is a slight digression. I actually support much of what Joe Biden has done on Ukraine. I wish he had, been a little bit more proactive. I wish he'd moved faster. But where was the bully pulpit? Where was the speech to the American people rallying support? Now, that's just one issue. It's obviously an important issue. But at some point, you have to talk to the American people. You have to explain to them. And quite frankly, you have to explain it over and over and over again. You have to say the same. You can't assume that because you said something once, the people will understand it. And also, you've been around these people, from Washington, D.C. You can get that Washington speak where they start speaking in acronyms. And they say, well, look at this bill, this bill, this bill. Look, the average American has no idea. They're not hanging on Congress. They don't care about the procedure. But there are some fundamental issues out there that if the Democrats, are serious about. And by the way, my take here is I'm not a Democrat, but I think it is an existential requirement that they keep Donald Trump out of the White House. So I don't want them to blow it. And so they're going to have to they're going to have to go where the people are and be able to talk to them. They're going to have to be comfortable talking with people who may not share all of their buzzwords, who may not use all of the pronouns they want, who may not have the exact same agenda, but also, find out where you share the values and then, translate that into politics.
Well, but, my grandmother used to say, you don't blow your own horn, there's no music. But more materially to politics, if you don't make the case, you're going to lose the case. If you don't tell me your story, someone else is going to tell me their version of it, and you're not going to like the ending. Ukraine should be a no-brainer for Americans. This is exactly what we wanted in Afghanistan. Let them fight it. This is their fight. Now, it may redound to us. It may wind up being bad for us down the road. But this is theirs. Give them money. Give them the weapons. But let them do it. Not our boots. Not our people. This is what we always said we wanted. Now they're doing it. They're losing on that issue. The economy. They could be making an argument that given where Biden came in, this is all positive, positive, positive. Okay. But they're losing to the grocery store and to the gas pump because they don't explain it. I have this fight with Bill O'Reilly every time the economy comes up. And he's like, Biden's done, grocery store. I say, yeah, but you got to look at why prices are up. They're on his watch. It's his economy. It sucks. Trump's was much better. I'm like, how was Trump's much better? I mean, he spent every bit as much and more than Biden has, and he passed those tax cuts that were unpaid for and did not. Oh, no, they drove the economy better than others. No, they didn't. It was all cyclical, but they're not making this case, and it's not my job to make it, Charlie. It's not my job to carry the flag for the guy who can't make the case against Trump. And I think that's the position they're in. I just don't know how they get out of it, but it does make sense that everything's so evenly divided.
Yeah, I don't think it was a brilliant move for them to embrace the term Bidenomics necessarily. But again, I was just listening to a show on another cable network right before we went on, and they were scratching their heads. Why don't the American people understand how great the economy is? Because here are these various numbers. Well, part of it is that Americans don't think about the world as a whiteboard. And so if you're coming in a seminar room and you're writing down pieces of legislation, or you're explaining that the rate of inflation is going down, that person who just came from the grocery store knows that the price of things is still dramatically up from where it was a year ago. You have to address them where they are. Now, again, this should be kind of low-hanging fruit, because what are the Republicans doing? I mean, they're proving that they're not a serious governing party. They look like a complete clown show. And a Democratic Party should be able to message that, look, we were accused of defunding the police. Actually, we've increased money for the police. But these guys want to defund the military. They want to defund. They're attacking the military. They're undermining the military. They are undermining our foreign policy. They are appeasing. They're not putting America first. They are defunding the criminal justice system. These are things that ought to be relatively easy for them to do. But I sometimes wonder whether or not they're looking over their shoulder and they're afraid of antagonizing certain of their constituencies. And look, those are not the constituencies that are going to determine the outcome of next November's election.
I love ExpressVPN. I use it because we have to protect our personal information. Look, this is how the tech giants are making their money. They track our history, everything we click on. Okay, they build a profile on us. You have a conversation with your friend, all of a sudden you start to get ads. It's not a coincidence, all right? And then they sell off our data. ExpressVPN, the app on your computer or phone, the software hides your IP address from third parties. Makes your activity more difficult for companies to trace and sell. And look, that's the game here. So today's the day you get the VPN that I trust to protect my online privacy, which is everything. Why? Big bad tech. It is definitely at the door, okay? If you visit expressvpn.com/CCP, you can get an extra 3 months free on a 1-year package, all right? That's EXPRESSVPN, Victor Papa November, .com/CCP. expressvpn.com/CCP. Making the argument that the wage worker versus the investor should like the economy is a stupid argument, and here's why. As somebody who worked in mezzanine finance and studied economics, that's like you grabbing my arm and pinching me, which would of course do nothing because I'm incredibly strong. But if you were doing that and you started to pinch me less, and you said, see?
Yeah.
Feels good, doesn't it? No, it still feels bad. Still pinching me, Charlie.
Yeah.
That's what's happening with the rate of inflation. And wage growth is down for the wage worker. So yes, there's been tremendous productivity of wealth in the country, even in recent years, not for the wage economy. And look, I think there are things that can be done about this, but the most basic thing, and the reason I harp on East Palestine, and while I do not need a bunch of lefty congressional people and their, Democratic staff to call me and say, ease off on East Palestine, is it's an opportunity. First of all, it's my job to advocate for the interests of people who can't advocate for themselves. Second, this is a layup. Just go to the fucking place and show them that you care and that you're going to give them more and figure out what's in their houses and what's in the water. And the answers may be okay. And if they're not, then you can address them. But it's a layup for you. So you got to speak to the people who are in pain. That's what Trump has done. He doesn't speak to them. He speaks for them. He's an agent of their grievance.
I am your voice. And this, by the way, is hard to get your head around, that Donald Trump, he of the golden toilets, is somehow this populist champion, that he identifies with the working man. The fact that he's been able to pull that off, I know is, sets people's hair on fire. But I have to say that I thought it was intriguing, interesting that Joe Biden decided that he was going to join the UAW picket line, the first sitting U.S. president to actually align themselves with the union in that particular way. Now, I think there's a high risk to that. That could go south.
I didn't like it. I don't think it's for the president of the United States to involve itself in a labor dispute.
Okay, so I actually agree on substance with that, but it also signaled to me, though, that Joe Biden was willing to contest the working class vote, because there are a lot of Democrats who seem to think, okay, we've lost the white working class. We're not actually going to worry about that anymore. We're going to replace them with suburban voters, upper educated voters. The math doesn't work on that. Joe Biden is basically saying, I'm going to fight. I'm not going to cede this ground to Donald Trump. I'm going to fight him. I agree with you, actually, on the substance of it, but the politics there was a certain instinct there and a willingness to mix things up. It was sort of the opposite of the case you were just talking about, where they were AWOL.
So talk gas, talk groceries, talk promoting the trades as much as you do 2- and 4-year colleges, and those people will start listening to you. And on the culture argument, say, hey, listen, just because people in my party say things doesn't mean I'm going to do things.
That's right. But he's got to be able to say that. And also, he ought to be pointing out that Donald Trump is out there saying he's going to impose a 10% tariff on everything, raise the price of everything. Everything, you think things are bad now? The price of every single thing you buy is going to go up if this guy gets into the White House. Turn it around on him. But I just don't sense that nimbleness of messaging. The thing about Donald Trump is, I'm interested in your take on this. I don't think is a great strategic or tactical thinker, but he's got this reptilian instinct. He's got this sense. He knows what plays. And this makes him an effective and dangerous demagogue. But he does know when there's an issue to exploit it. And I wish his opponents had the same kind of instinct.
He has a very good savvy for the sell.
Yes.
And he understands, he grew up one way. Yeah, but in truth, look, he spent his early years in Queens, which is a very mixed place.
Yeah.
And they say he lived in Jamaica Estates. Fred Trump hadn't made his money yet. They did not live in some opulence in Jamaica Estates. That's a misleading name. I lived right across the road from it in a place called Hollis. And I delivered papers over there. It was not a fancy place. So he's been around a lot of regular people. He was in New York City in the construction business. He's been around a lot of people. He knows what pisses him off. Yep. And he understands how to harness that. And you can hold him as accountable and responsible for not having the level of intellectual prowess and sophistication to his thoughts. But this is politics we're talking about.
Well, he's also shameless. I mean, he's prepared to say anything. I mean, if you're not limited by facts or by the truth, that's kind of a superpower. I mean, this guy, he can bullshit about anything, right?
That's not a negative in politics, though, Charlie.
Not anymore.
That's not a negative in politics. Never. I mean, I can't tell you how crazed Mario Cuomo would become with reporters, where he'd be on the phone with them and be like, that's not what I said. That's not what's in the damn bill. You're taking it out of context. And the right, well, I got a source who says that they, whatever bullshit there was being spun his way. That's not how politics is. People don't expect it. So him doing those things doesn't bother them. It's just, who's looking out for me? That's what the proxy is for better these days. They're not going to believe that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. It never happens. And for no other reason that they know you don't have enough power. But you do have to show that you care about what frightens them. And in too many cases, I believe right now, Democrats are seen as a focus of what frightens them, which is absurd to me on a number of levels. But that's the state of play. Charlie Sykes, I appreciate you. I know you're pressed for time. I'd love to have you back again.
Hey, this was great. I would love to come back. We got a lot of stuff to hash out, I think.
You think about these things. You write about these things, and that makes you of value to this audience. These are critical thinkers and independents. So Charlie Sykes, thank you very much.
All right, thanks. We'll do this again.
Charlie Sykes is a conservative, and you heard me even lapse into saying, you people, you people, you people, as if he were a Democrat, because he's arguing about why the Democrats should be better. Why? You heard him explain it. He's not a Democrat. He believes that Trump personally is an existential threat. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Whatever. That's not what's relevant. You are free to. But that's where Sykes is coming from. As a conservative, as someone who wants to vote Republican. See, I think that's really interesting, because I believe that there are a lot of Sykes. I mean, not as smart as he, not as eloquent as he, not as wired in as he. But there are a lot of people who are Republicans, but they're not going to go for Trump, and that all of these different things they're going to see is going to dominate the next 4 years. And how much of your time do you want taken up with Trump's troubles? I think that's something that's being overlooked. But at the same time, you got competing interests. The Democrats are not making the message. I'm not saying they can't make the case. I'm saying they're not making the case, and it's not my job to make it. It's not my job to have Republicans on and say, here's why the Democrats are better. I'll fact check their arguments. I'll put it into proper context. I'll push back when it's bullshit, but it is not my job to make your case. Please follow, please subscribe. Check out the Free Agent merch. I love you guys sending me the pictures of you wearing it. Be a critical thinker. Be an independent, okay? That is our best future. And the next generation, once you get under my age, all right, low 50s, people are more and more independent, more and more critical thinkers. And I love it. I love it. This is your world for the taking. Don't let people take it from you. Let's get after it.